they absorb energy, they sit in space, they watch for things to happen, and then as things happen to others in the external, they pull from that inappropriate and disproportionate amounts of pizzazz. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to Going Dotty. I'm Tracy again, and in today's video we'd like to overview the different sorts of toxic people that we come across, the different sorts of characters and the archetypes that you can be dealing with in your life and in your world. So let's crack into it. So earlier on within the series, we had a look at the different sorts of ego that there is. But there's other sorts of toxicities that we come across within other people, other creative beings. And we just want to break down some of those archetypal patterns and make them relevant to ourselves in our life and our world, because sometimes when we're in space with people and we're sharing energetics, we're sharing space, we're sharing conversation, and sometimes we just feel things happening and we're not really sure what's going on. And there can be a lot of, energy stealing. Vampirism is a phrase that's been used a lot if you're familiar with it. And this energy stealing, this energy hoarding, and this hoarding of chi is something that we talk about a lot when it comes to the ego. So with that in mind, we just want to have a look at some of the other sorts of toxicities that we can be coming across in others in time and space. So one of the fundamentals would be just what you call the lazy creator, just a lazy creator. Lazy creators are draining. They're there, they're hanging around, they're not really doing anything, they're not contributing, but yet they're sitting in the space, they're soaking it all up. This is very similar to the passive ego that has been discussed in another video. But we talk about the lazy creator because it's a lot about how you interact with these people. It's how you feel around these people. It's all about dynamics. So you could be in a business meeting with somebody who's just being a little bit lazy. They're not carrying the load. And then that mulls around in the group. The spiritual or the energetic surface area of other people have to carry the burden of this person who's just not carrying and pulling their own weight. It can be very difficult, draining, upsetting to be constantly engaging with somebody who's just quite simply being quite lazy. Similar on from this again would be the emotional stealers. Again, there's a lot of correlation to the passive ego in this context, but emotional stealers are people who they absorb energy, they sit in space, they watch for things to happen, and then as things happen to others in the external, they pull from that inappropriate and disproportionate amounts of pizzazz. These are people who they're not moving in their energy field of life, they're not flowing within their own chi, so they're waiting for the external to uphold and conform that chi for them. This is very different from the classical ego who tries to control what's going on in the world. Whereas if you have an emotional stealer who's basically operating like an energy sponge, they're waiting for other things to happen so that they can feel that resonance happening for them. And we bear in mind that with these energetic, toxic dynamics, it's all about fuel for the mind. It's all about somebody being able to buzz at a later stage of something that's happening. The next sort of toxic person that I would suggest is what I call creator gone wrong. This is an individual who doesn't realize about creation, moving, and I mean creation just in life, holding yourself, carrying yourself, being yourself. And the creator gone wrong generally manifests when you have somebody who doesn't realize how much work you're putting into something, when they don't realize how much effort you are putting in. So I think a good example here is a kind of, an atypical romantic relationship. And if you have two people in a dynamic and you have one person who's putting in all the energy, they're putting in all the effort, they're doing all of this internal work, they're calibrating, they're processing, they're integrating, they're making, aligned choices. And they're doing that for the benefit of a creator gone wrong who is just accepting because they don't notice, because they don't recognize. That can be a very, very draining relationship to be in, because you're putting in so much, you're trying so hard, and the invalidation of it not even being noticed. So when it comes to that, I just phrase that off as creator gone wrong, and understanding that that's the mechanical system that's happening and occurring becomes useful when you are taking control of your own flow. This is why we engage in our energetic and spiritual body awareness and energy work and conscious awareness and conscious work, so that we are not losing the resource, because the resource doesn't come back around. There isn't an endless supply of resource. You know, we recycle our resources. And the next sort of toxic individual that we're going to be talking about is, again, I know this isn't the most professional sounding of terms, but I just call them knitting needles. I kind of assume that you know what knitting needles are. There's a picture of them here. They create things like this. But knitting needles are people who are very superficially, they're very intellectually interested in you, what you're doing, what's going on in your life and world. It's very much an intellect-focused activity, dynamic, information, data, these sorts of things. But the problem with knitting needles is that knitting needles doesn't actually care about the reality that's going on around. Their interest is very superficial, and they're not actually sharing the full girth of their energy, because a part of themselves has compartmentalized off and they don't really care. You know, they do have an intellectual interest. And I think, again, when we're looking at the geometry and the energetics, we talk about masculine energy and feminine energy. Masculine energy, data, information. Feminine energy, feeling, flow, and form. So the knitting needles is wanting their masculine energy to be fulfilled, but they're not sharing feminine energy at all. And when you're in a bi dynamic with somebody else, if they are embodying one sort of particle, the masculine, that means that the energy balance will deviate out and you will be holding the feminine energy. Yet you will be engaging with somebody who is withholding their feminine energy. You know, the ingredients that you put into a conversation matter, you know, because that is the reality, the energetic reality that another person is interfacing with. So if you're only being superficial in your care and consideration and thoughts about something like knitting needles is, but then knitting needles isn't actually offering any girth of reality underneath that, the person that is interfacing with knitting needles is only getting half of the equation. And this is the co-creative element of it. You know, we each hold both sides of the coin, the Tao, the yin and yang, the masculine and feminine. Both elements are of importance. So if you are only getting half of the equation, whether you intuitively register that something is missing or not, you are only getting half of the fullness that is purported to be there. And this is why we consider these to be toxic things, because the suggestion is that this is a full, healthy, open, flowing relationship. But then it transpires that reality showcases that only half is being fulfilled. And this is why they're difficult. You will be left deficient if you are giving 100% of yourself to a dynamic or a situation. If you're putting in your best effort and the person that you are interacting with is only putting in 50% of the effort, and that 50% of effort is fairly superficial, you're going to be at a loss for that. You're going to be the one who's at a loss. They're the one who's going to be fulfilled because their interest is being fulfilled and saturated, and they're not having to expend any natural relationship energy to you and your relationship dynamic. So that's an out of balance relationship. And I just want to highlight that one as one to be aware of. The final kind of toxic dynamic in relationship that we can be coming up against, or this sort of toxicity that we can be coming up against, is what I call code makers who are really code breakers. So these are people who say things that aren't real. They're very ungrounded. They're very false and unsustainable in their creation. So for example, you know, a code maker who's really a code breaker is somebody who, let's say they want something to come to fruition, you know, And they know within themselves what they want. They're very manipulative. This is why there's toxicity and therefore a bit of energetic danger going on with these people. They'll decide something that they want and then they'll throw it out there. And they'll say it to the person. And what they're really looking for is the feedback that they get from that concept. And the feedback that they get will be what they will use to fuel their synaptic link, whether this is going to occur or not. So they'll throw something out there, and if they get the feedback that they want, that's it. You know, the synaptic points have joined within their energetic awareness. They're like, yes, I'm going to continue on with this, and they'll move forward. But they're not really interacting in something that's real. You know, if somebody suggests an idea to you and you say, oh, that sounds like a good idea, you should try that. And they take a disproportionate amount of information, data, meaning, and fuel out of that. That is a very ungrounded individual. And what's difficult is they're very manipulative. They come into a conversation with this predetermined concept that they want to have fulfilled. It's not an organicness to their nature. They are actually seeking to get something very specific. And they can very much punish you if you don't respond in the way that they want or expect. If you don't say what they want you to say, you know, you can be reprimanded for that. So if you've ever found yourself, you know, your friend is suddenly off with you and you're not quite sure why, it's important to have an intuitive, instinctive awareness of how people are operating, why they're doing that in a certain way towards you. Because what you might find is that they are seeking for you to fulfill something for them in the external, which gives them their internal permission to move on and move forward with that. These people are waiting on the world external to give them permission to open the energy gates for them to do something. And again, there's a bit of a level of codependency in here. Instead of doing something off their own bat, they will manipulate and therefore abuse the people around them to give them that sense of power, place and position to enact and fulfill the things that they want to come into fruition. When it comes to all of these different sorts of toxicities, we highlight them because it's very important to be lucid to what's happening to you and in the world around you, and for you to have a grounded sense of conscious structure to understand what's going on. So I hope these kind of few archetypes have just helped illuminate some of the issues or problems that might be going on for you in your life and your world. And please let me know in the comments below. Please get in touch, like the video, subscribe, do all of the YouTube things because they really do help. But I hope you found this useful today. Look after yourselves and I will talk to you again.